A couple of months ago, I think that I made a video at the start of summer to try to document my progress and my journey and see where I am at the end of summer, because summer is one of the hardest times of year for me with my health conditions, and usually when I experience the worst flare ups. So I wanted to see if this year was going to be okay year or if it was going to be one where I really struggled with a lot of things. So now that summer is finally coming to an end, I thought that I would just talk a little bit about what this past summer has been like. So thankfully, I did not go into a huge flare up. I did experience some some I think what I would call mild to moderate flares occasionally, but nothing that was like really severe this year. At the beginning of the summer, the weather was pretty nice, so I was able to go outside and get some fresh air. And then I would say halfway through, I started to struggle. So it became very, very hot. I have really bad heat intolerance, so I was struggling with that. But then the air quality where I live, I've never seen in all my years of being alive, I have never experienced anything like that before. The air quality was so bad that you could not go outside. And even being inside enclosed, with being indoors, you could still smell the smoke coming in through, even with the windows closed. And during that time, I did struggle with coughing, shortness of breath, heart pain, um, to the point where I was considering going and having just the monitor hooked up just to make sure everything was okay. But I waited it out a few days and eventually it subsided. But I was worried at that point that I was going to enter into a flare up, but I didn't, thankfully. And then there was the cyclosporiasis outbreak that started to come about, and that had me a little bit anxious because at the start of summer I was trying to eat healthy. So I was eating a lot of salads, I was eating blueberries, and just trying to have fresh fruits and vegetables. Last summer, I ended up getting some sort of a bug. I don't know if it was a parasite. I don't know what it was. I was eating a lot of baked salads around that time, and I ended up having something get really thrown out of whack in my gut, which it never recovered even to this day since last summer fully. It has made progress and it's definitely better than where it was at last summer, but I still have to be very cautious because whatever I experienced through my gut microbiome so far off balance that I think it's been hard to pinpoint exactly what caused it, but I think it contributed to developing an intolerance to fructose. And so I've tried the low FODMAP diet. That has been helpful, but if I have anything with fructose or honey or molasses, it will be instant GI distress for me. And I was given uh, labs that looked for all different kinds of infections, bacteria, parasites. Cyclosporiasis was not checked for, so I don't know if maybe that is what I experienced last summer or not. But when this started to come out this summer, I was very cautious because I knew if I were to get it, it would have just been really, I don't know what would have happened with the condition that my gut is in as it is. So I just switched to trying to have like canned vegetables and things like that. And it just was a summer where I think that I reflected a lot on so many things so much more deeply, and just the state of the world, the environment, how crazy so many things are, where you can't breathe the air, you can't eat the food. You can eat the food, but you don't know what is safe, what is regulated, what's actually, and if something does go wrong like this, it's like they took forever to figure out what the source was, and it's just crazy. So um, just a lot of deeper kinds of reflections that I noticed that I was having um, throughout this past summer. And then I tried to have a garden. I will insert a photo of the flowers that I tried to plant and then what they ended up kind of looking like at different points throughout the summer. Um, we had really bad weather where I live as well, in terms of hailstorms, rainstorms, and it destroyed my plants, some of them. So some of them did not grow, I think, like they were supposed to because of that, but then some of them did grow. The only ones that actually bloomed or ended up growing was the flowers that I planted for my bird that passed away, Dorian. Um, I planted two different flowers for her, blue ones and white ones, because she was a blue and white parakeet, and only the blue ones bloomed. So the white ones, I don't know what was going on with them, but they didn't. And then I started off by hoping to plant a particular poppy. It was like a Hungarian poppy for my mom, and they ended up being out of stock. So then I got a different pack of seeds for just a different flower that kind of reminded me of her. But then the other ones came back in stock, and I got those. I planted them, and I do not think that I was given the right seeds in the right pack, because what ended up growing was nothing like what the picture showed. It was like wheatgrass or something that was just growing. So it was definitely not making it. I tried to plant little pumpkins and really hoped that those were going to grow, and they didn't. So they started off growing, and then with the storms and just all of that, they stopped growing. I ended up getting a tomato plant a few weeks into summer, and again, the hail knocked off like there was like a baby tomato plant, and four of them just got completely knocked off, and then there was one that ended up growing. So I ended up getting one little tomato off of it. So I would say that my planting journey this year was not a complete success, but it also, at least there was something that ended up blooming, and it was a very pretty flower. So I was thankful and happy about that. I also planted some lavender for my stepdad, and that one did not end up growing. My cilantro was growing but got destroyed. My dill was growing but got destroyed. So a lot of it just didn't end up working out. But I was pretty impressed with the fact that I even got anything to grow at all. So I was happy about that. So that I will insert a video of what it looked like when it was healthy kind of throughout the summer, and then when it actually bloomed, what it looked like, and share that right here. And I felt a lot of fatigue at different points, especially when it was hot. I just had a lot of heat intolerance. I had to really pace myself. But I'm really thankful that I didn't end up having a huge flare up this year. Um, and I also yesterday went to go to an appointment for a evaluation for EDS at a reputable hospital. I found the doctor that I went to go and see from the actual EDS website. I will link that information in the description. And I don't know if maybe it could ever be helpful to somebody else, but if you type in the area that you're living in, it will connect you to different places around you that have specialists that can diagnose or assess EDS, or physical therapists that are trained in working with EDS. And so the closest to me was 3 hours away. And I live as it is in a location that has good health care. When I was growing up and when I was younger, I lived in a very small town that was notorious for really poor health care. So that might be part of the reason why, some of my conditions might have went unrecognized for so long. And it might just be that, it's just that it's that unrecognized in general, because even living in the place that I've been living in for a while that has good health care, I still have not, I've pretty much had to piece things together on my own. Um, it just seems like there's a lot of, medical professionals in places that don't really connect the dots and figure out this condition. So I went yesterday and I was assessed. It was about an hour-long appointment. I was asked all kinds of questions regarding if I could contort myself into different shapes when I was younger, if I was double jointed, if I've ever had any dislocations or subluxations. And then I was assessed all throughout my body. My joints were all looked at, my feet, and I was a 5 out of 9 on the Baton scale. So the only ones that I didn't get was I cannot touch my thumb to my forearm. I used to be able to when I was younger. I can't anymore. And then my knees do not hyperextend. My kneecaps are extremely hypermobile. And if I squat down or like climb stairs, my knees will be cracking and popping, but they do not hyperextend. So I did not get a point for my knees or for my thumbs, but everything else I met the criteria for. And then it was kind of interesting because I didn't even know or ever hear of a hospital hypermobility score, but I was also graded on in that realm, I guess, of things. And I scored a 7 on the hospital hypermobility score. And from what I could gather, and what that was um, she went around and looked at joints throughout my whole body. So, like my shoulders, my legs, my hips. She took like my legs and was like bending them all around and, looking at my skin, trying to see if it was stretchy, trying to look for scars. So I had a atrophic or atrophic scarring. I had really soft skin and stretchy, hyperextensible. So at the end of it all, she said that I met the criteria and that I was diagnosed with Ehlers Danlos syndrome. And to me, it still hasn't really registered or processed because it's been such a journey to get to this point in this place, and a lot of gaslighting, a lot of just, and if you're somebody who grew up with just gaslighting in general in, your life, going through these kinds of medical experiences can be really hard because you constantly are second guessing things and questioning yourself, and it's really hard to, you know, I don't know, like accept certain diagnoses when you actually get them. So for me, it was shocking. I had to ask her a couple of times, like, are you sure that I have this. Like, am I actually diagnosed with this? And she was just like, yes, you have Ehlers Danlos syndrome. And I was like, is that going to be like in my medical records? And she's like, yes, it is. And so I just think it's so important to be assessed for this. I want to share my experience as well, even if it can help just one person to get answers faster than I did, or to continue on trying to get a diagnosis and not giving up, because there's so many things that I feel personally that I feel it is necessary to have, in your records, because this condition can affect so many different aspects of your life. If you ever have to have a surgery, it can affect like the healing. It can affect anesthesia. Sometimes you might need more than other people might. It can just be more, it can cause the medical professionals maybe to be more cautious about, being a little bit more careful when knowing that you have fragile, collagen issues and all of that. So for me, I think the part about it that I was the most happy about is that my daughter is not going to have to jump through the hoops that I had to jump through, and she will be able to know where to go and, have a first degree relative who has been diagnosed, and hopefully that makes it a lot less stressful on her than it was for me. So that is something good that happened this past summer, finally, that, I received that diagnosis officially. It's been a journey, it's been crazy, but I finally made it to that point. And I was on a wait list for 3 years. So when I did find the specialist online, I called to schedule an appointment, and I was put on a wait list for 3 years. And then the last like 6 months, I was starting to think maybe I was just lost in the system or something, and they didn't, um, they forgot about me. But about 2 weeks ago, they had called to tell me that I finally was able to be seen. And I suspected that I was going to have like, when they scheduled the appointment, it was going to be months out, just because of how long I was on the wait list for. But they actually got me in within like 2 weeks. So it went pretty quickly once that they had me come off of that wait list. So I just think that it's worth it, if you are somebody that is in this kind of a situation, to keep trying, to don't give up on it, and keep going. And yeah, so I am just grateful that I made it through this summer, and that is what my overall experience has been like. I think for the most part, I don't think there's anything that um, has really happened that, has been important, I guess, besides those things. So that's where I am now at the end of summer compared to where I was at the beginning. Also, this summer was my first summer going through summer on the medications for my mast cell issues. So all my other previous summers, I was not on cromolyn sodium, I was not on Zyrtec or famotidine, and I don't know how much that played into the management of things this year compared to previous years, but I do think that it has been helpful and beneficial as well in just how this summer went overall. So that is just the other thing that I thought that I would mention, and that is it for this one.